Hey family, I'm back once again. This is Brother Prodigy, aka William Will I Am, and this is part 2, okay? Or part 1A, whatever you want to call it. Life in a virtual reality. And in this part, I'm going to be talking about how the body limits and constricts consciousness. And I'm going to be going into that a little further. Okay. So, I just want to know that I want to let you all know that I am downtown, so there are planes that are going by, so don't let that distract you in relation to this message, okay? So, once again, if you have not gotten the book Gnosis of a God, Gnosis of a God, God, go and get that. It will really explain the topics that I talk about, because pretty much every topic that I've discussed is in the book, and I do talk about it at length. So if there's anything that you're not really sure of in relation to everything regarding Gnosticism and things that Gnosticism really hasn't addressed, go and get the book. It'll really help you out a lot. Okay, it's just a primer on the things that I talk about, while at the same time I go into detail regarding the Matrix, virtual reality, metaphysics, etc. Okay, so let me be frank. Okay, this capitalistic society that we live in can and does oppose the elevation of consciousness in some ways. Okay, indirectly. Okay, I'm speaking to the virtual reality, the lesser virtual reality that has been constructed within the greater virtual reality. All right, the it's this lesser virtual reality that I am really at odds with, if you will. Okay, not the greater virtual, because the greater virtual reality is neutral. Okay, it depends upon your interpretation. Okay, so this lesser virtual reality, this capitalistic society that we live in, can and does oppose the elevation of consciousness indirectly by offering too many, the option to gratify your fleshly avatar in exchange for money. Okay, capitalism. The problem with this is that the avatar over time can and does degenerate in fast food, cigarettes, alcohol, drugs, etc. It does affect the avatar deleteriously. Now, don't get it twisted. Now, I'm not condemning anyone. I'm saying that the ways and mannerisms of this level of the matrix compels us to become consumers, parasites on the system. The system wants you to depend on it for your survival. This matrix doesn't like men and women to be so sufficient apart from the system. And for this reason, I despise the matrix of imprisonment that we have been subjected to, only because I don't like, nor do I respect or honor those who exploit others based upon a perceived ignorance or lack of awareness. True knowledge is not broadcasted to the masses. True knowledge is not broadcasted to the masses. Why? Because many men and women cannot handle the truth. They would just rather believe a lie. Many times, and oftentimes, lies are more comfortable and cater more towards the ego, or the picture that people tend to paint of themselves apart from who they really are. People tend to paint a picture of who they would like to be. And since we experience a reality frame by way of being immersed within a greater virtual reality, we cannot help at times to frame our perception of who we are around who we would like to be. Okay? Or who we idolize or look up to. This is a fact. I'm not talking to all, just the vast majority of those that are so willing to partake in this materialistic, capitalistic society, feudalistic in many ways, that they would give their very life for it, or sacrifice their very own children for the luxuries, for what they perceive to be value. These people that do these things are individualized consciousness awareness units that are either very young or are very stiff-necked in their ways and refuse to invest their energy into something that's truly productive. As I've said in my previous installment, we live in a virtual reality matrix that exists within a greater virtual reality. This lesser virtual reality has many gods and many lords. Okay, these lesser gods and lords establish laws, statutes, and commandments for the masses to abide by in exchange for labor, energy, or credit. Now, don't get me wrong, societies need law to restrain the expression of evil. However, when the restraining forces are only motivated by money or what they believe to be of intrinsic value, authority is not genuine, nor can it be when the sole motivation of enforcing law is for material gain. So, those that reside within the matrix go along, just to get along. In other words, they don't rock the boat. Even those of us that know that really and essentially there is no law, because there isn't. There is no law, only that which exists within a contract. So no contract, no law. Every entity that you deal with, they solicit you to enter into agreements, into a contract in some form or fashion, whether it be written, verbal, etc. Because with no contract, there is no law. Like those of us who might have a driver's license, you apply for that driver's license. You sign contracts that enter yourself into an agreement with the state in order for police officers or policy enforcers to really establish jurisdiction upon you or your vessel. Now, it's simply on an individual case-by-case basis. But the ones that know this still abide by these laws. I still abide by these laws to an extent, simply just not to provoke the agents of the matrix to use excessive force upon those that are truly righteous. The God of corporate religion is the state incorporated. A corporation is a dead fictus in law. Corpus comitatus, corpus corporatum. A corpse. And really, essentially, a corpse is defined by Black's Law Dictionary 3rd edition as being the dead body of a human being, which is interesting. A corpse is defined by Black's Law Dictionary 3rd edition as being the dead body of a human being. Now, wait a minute. The dead body of a human being? You see, if you really pay attention to law and the definitions they use to describe things, you'll find out a lot. Because oftentimes things are hidden in plain sight. And if you notice, they make a clear distinction between the body and a human being. The human being is the consciousness, or what is being legally termed conscious. The body, or corpse, is the avatar which has no standing in law and therefore is rendered legally dead. If you've ever been to a graveyard, you'll notice that all the names are written in all capital letters, evidencing a dead fictus, someone who has no standing in law. because they are just avatars without consciousness. Avatars without consciousness are looked at and viewed as being dead and having no standing in law. So if you do not exercise or demonstrate that you are conscious within this matrix, then they will automatically assume that you are dead. The presumption is that you are dead in the eyes of the law, which is why you need a lawyer or an attorney to represent you in a court of law. Okay, an attorney means to take and give to the landlord. Okay, so when you hire an attorney, if you do have an attorney, the job of the attorney is to take the case or to take over for the avatar, to assume to be the consciousness for the avatar. That's what the attorney, that's his job, is to take over and to assume to be the consciousness of the avatar. Because as being conscious men and women, you are expected to handle your own affairs. Okay, as being conscious, you are expected to demonstrate and exercise your will in bringing solution to a problem. If you cannot exercise a remedy, bring a remedy to the court and close the account, you are seen as being dead. Okay, you are seen as having no consciousness, because you are assumed. If one is conscious, they assume that you would know law. Okay, so this is why they compel you at times to hire an attorney if you're not competent. If you've ever been to court, they say, okay, do you understand the charges against you? The charges are the open account. If you do not understand, or when they mean understand, they mean underwrite. Are you willing to underwrite or sign for these charges to bring a remedy? If you say you do not understand, they say, well, okay, well, you need to hire an attorney, which is, they're basically telling you, okay, you're obviously not conscious in bringing a remedy to a situation, bringing the solution. So you need to hire someone that is conscious to represent you, okay, in the right light, all right, in the right spectrum, all right. So in this matrix, I despise it, because it's predicated on lies and deceit instead of truth and honor. But then again, ignorance of the law is no excuse for you. Okay, so for me, it goes both ways. I comprehend it, but at times I think that these lords use it just deliberately to take the power and energy from the masses. And at times I feel that it does exploit and promote ignorance. Okay, this is how the system works, y'all, and we are still considered chattel property. All right, this is where you have to draw the line between your avatar and the constant presumptions that are made upon it, and your consciousness that possesses infinite potential in order to accomplish that which you so will and desire within a virtual reality with this rule set. Okay, so it's your consciousness that possesses infinite potential. All right, infinite potential to what? Solve problems. Okay, reconcile differences, evolve. Okay, and it is your consciousness that accomplishes that which you so will and desire within this virtual reality with a strict rule set. See, you do have will force, which is the power of the consciousness to exercise the ability to choose between things, but it is within a system that imposes a strict rule set. And within that system, you have various matrices that impose further rule sets as to confine the decision space of the individualized consciousness awareness unit. Okay, so a lot of your laws are designed to confine your decision space, which is your perception of options. Okay, the only freedom that we have is the freedom to act within or under the jurisdiction of, okay, a set group of laws, universal law, aka the laws of the simulation. And consciousness is even further threatened by the imprisonment, death, or fine. Okay? If one commits a quote-unquote crime while under the jurisdiction of the respective corporate state, all right? And there are millions of codes that are on the books. They say the average person commits 3 felonies a day without even knowing so. Okay, so that should tell you something. All right. Now, let's get to the limitations that are placed upon the consciousness by way of the brain, okay? Which I also talked about in my last installment. So if you haven't heard my last installment, I would recommend that you really watch that first and then view this one, as the first makes for an interesting segue into this latter installment. But yeah, the brain is what sets limitations upon the consciousness in general, or more specifically, the brain is what places limitations on the data stream that your consciousness receives by way of the brain from this three-dimensional reality. Okay? The brain cannot directly place a limitation, and let me just say this too, okay, because I don't want to confuse this. Okay, the brain cannot directly place a limitation on consciousness because consciousness resides outside of this virtual reality simulation. Like I said, you know, the chess players are outside of the pieces that are being moved on the board. Okay, just like how consciousness is. Consciousness resides, and it's not local. It resides outside of this universe. This universe is the simulation, and the planets, the cosmos, everything that is within this universe is a part of the simulation. Okay, other worlds, other star systems, galaxies, etc. All right. So consciousness has to, out of necessity, it has to reside out of the this virtual reality, which is why nobody can pinpoint, oh, their consciousness is right there. You know what I mean? You can't weigh it. You know what I mean? It's not visible. All right, but we know it exists. All right, and you can see the expression of consciousness. Okay, you can see the evidence of consciousness, but you cannot see or detect consciousness. You can see the effects of consciousness or the byproduct of one that is conscious, but you cannot actually see consciousness. Okay, so consciousness resides outside of this virtual reality simulation. But if consciousness takes up an avatar to operate through the central hub for interface, because the central hub for interface is the brain. All right, the brain then becomes a road or a connecting point between the digital matrix and individualized consciousness. Okay, so when I say consciousness is limited, I'm basically saying, I'm speaking to the stream of data that your consciousness is receiving through your physical body via the brain. Okay, because your brain is what interprets the signals, the vibration. Okay, the vibration of things, and this vibration is transferred to consciousness. Okay, so consciousness, which is outside of this universe, is connected to this virtual reality through the brain. Okay, and the brain is the medium. All right, so you see, your consciousness's interface with the avatar happens throughout the body, you know what I mean? But the brain is more or less a central hub for this interface. Okay, the more damage is done to the brain, the higher the potential for consciousness to be limited within this three-dimensional construct called quote-unquote reality. People say, get real, brother Will. Get real, brother Prada. Get real, man. You just gotta get real, man. You know, you gotta live in reality. And I just laugh, like, really? But here, that's, you know, obviously that's what we need to do. So most of the lasting effects that limit consciousness occur or are the byproduct of highly entropic repetitive activity. Okay, like smoking. You see, one cigarette doesn't contain a high enough probability to kill you, but one cigarette every hour for 50 years might increase the probability of your avatar being rendered inoperable, aka dead. Okay, so we list this reality is based upon statistical probability. Okay, what is the probability of you being sick, of you getting sick? What is the probability of you passing away from an ailment? Okay, it's not a deterministic, this reality is not a deterministic reality. It's a probabilistic, okay, reality. Okay, it is not a programmable reality. It is an evolved, it's not a programmed reality. It's a highly evolved reality. Okay. Now, I don't mean to bang on this reality or our avatars, because this is one of the best learning labs that are in existence. Speaking of the greater virtual reality, I'm just mad at the fact that what we are experiencing now is not the peak of our evolution. If the most powerful and successful nation on earth spreads and promotes highly entropic behavior under the auspices of peace and democracy, that would let you know that this is not the way. Now, we live in a highly evolved greater system, and I'm not contradicting what I just said. we live in a virtual reality matrix simulation that was designed with a few laws that set in motion various evolutionary processes. Okay, we live in an evolved system, okay, not a programmed one. All right, and apart from the laws that led evolution to this point, there is no law. And I'm reiterating that because I want it to sink in, and let me explain. The Matrix wants you to believe that all of these laws, statutes, and commandments are from God, right? Or they're based on a law from God, right? Now, whether that law be Jesus, Allah, Yahweh, etc., they want you to believe that, okay? And God we trust is the common motto, right? Well, the truth is there is no law outside of universal law, which are the laws that govern evolutionary processes. Wars are waged, and I'm using wage as a financial term. Wars are waged and fought in order to instill law by one nation upon another, period. And the victor is what establishes law, not the loser. If a savage nation manages to rise to world dominance, it will ultimately subject the rest of the world to barbarism and the laws of piracy and theft as well. It's just a fact. Since there really is no law, but that secret must be hidden so anarchy doesn't ensue on a massive scale, thus risking the toppling of a regime, okay? The masses have to be dumbed down to a point in which their capacity to recognize and differentiate between lies and the truth becomes skewed. Besides, people need order, and they feel like they need to be controlled. Do you? People feel like they need insurance just in case something does happen, right? Isn't that true? We are compelled to work at a job that pays us by the hour, usually, unless you're on salary, right, which is yearly, right? We're talked into going out and getting the newest and latest piece of shit car that comes out, or the newest and latest gimmick. You see, we're constantly inundated with these items that we feel that we need to go out and get. Okay? We're constantly running on the hamster wheel, thinking that we're really going somewhere. This is what the truly illumined ones want the masses of people to think. Don't worry, just be happy. Or not necessarily, I don't want to say the truly illumined one, because I consider myself as being truly illumined. I want to say the ones who really know the truth, or have a good grasp on truth, or they have enough grasp on what is really going on to exploit others. Okay. All right. Because it's not just knowing the information, it's preforming. Okay. Nations go to war against other nations in order to enforce their interpretation of what they believe to be law. If you can enforce law, you can control. And if you can control, you have power. And if you have power, you are a sovereign. Remember that. You want to know the truth? There is no law. This is just a multiplayer virtual reality matrix simulation that was created ages ago for one purpose, okay? To evolve consciousness and to be a matrix in which elements of consciousness, you and I, could interface with one another while growing simultaneously. The high priest then realized that things could be manipulated, okay, even dating back before Egypt, because that was only one level or age of this virtual reality, okay? You also had Atlantis and Lemuria in the level of ancient America that existed eons ago, okay? Eventually, ego got involved and power was lusted after, so control over others was seen as something that had to be done. And with control over others, you ultimately had to create two parties. One with the gnosis, or one party that held the gnosis, and another without it, okay? And subsequently set up ways in which the ones who had the knowledge would never give it to the ones who didn't, and the ones that were ignorant could never get a hold of the knowledge that would ultimately free them, okay? Which is still happening to this day. See, as I've said, this is a multiplayer game, meaning you interface with many other individualized consciousness awareness units through a system of immersion. So your interpretation of what is real might be totally different from the next person's interpretation of reality. You see, what you deem to be common might be totally different from the next person's idea of what is common or acceptable or appropriate, okay? One thing that we all, or many of us, have in common is that we are evolving. The avatars are evolving, and through changing conditions as well as consciousness. Consciousness is evolving constantly in order to decrease entropy. Or as some people might say, consciousness is evolving in order to become perfect. All right? Getting rid of that which does not benefit and growing towards that which can and does propel consciousness to higher and higher levels. If everything is intrinsically subjective as far as interpretation goes, how can one tell what is good and what is evil? And how can one establish a basis for that which is good or evil? You see? One can tell the difference between good and evil by comparing one's own interpretation of good and evil to if it increases or decreases entropy. So here's a litmus test that you can use to see if something is in fact good or evil, okay? If it increases or decreases entropy. Now, what is entropy? Because a lot of people hear me talk about entropy and they say, what the fuck is that? Okay, entropy is a measure of molecular randomness or disorder. Okay, the second law of thermodynamics says that any spontaneous process increases the disorder of the universe. If something has a high enough state of entropy, or a state of chaos rather, if something has a high state of chaos and disorder, or possesses a lack of pattern or organization, guess what? It might very well be highly entropic, okay? Which would actually be a bad thing. However, if something possesses a high degree of order, precision, and stability, guess what? It has an extremely low percentage of entropy. Okay, so highly chaotic, high entropy. Highly organized, highly patternized, stability, precision. Okay, low entropy. All right, simple enough, right? Now, when you look at nations, states, societies, civilizations that are chaotic always warring, fighting, battling. Okay, these are societies that are highly entropic. All right. Now they naturally could be like, not naturally, but there's always whenever there is a situation like that to where nations are highly entropic, ego is always behind it. Okay, or exploitation. It's either the country's own ego that is degenerating their nation, society, civilization, what have you, into that type of entropic behavior, or it's another nation feeding that to exploit another civilization, nation, societies, either natural resources, economy, etc. Okay. But for consciousness naturally seeks to evolve. Okay, and it evolves into lowering entropy. So civilizations with high states of entropy it's something that doesn't fit if they were really basing their civilization on nature. Okay, on consciousness. Okay, the goal of those that wish to prevent evolution, or to prevent certain people groups' evolution, is to make them highly entropic, chaotic, disorderly. This is similar to how, Facebook is set up. It's designed to give you random tidbits of information, oftentimes in chaotic patterns. You see, television commercials are designed to promote various products in what chaotic patterns. All right, you might see a Budweiser commercial, then after that you'll see a Cheerios commercial, then maybe a Ford commercial, etc. If you notice, you have to be key to that. And if you notice the statistical data that has been obtained in relation to the attention span of the average person, you see the average person has an attention span that's less than a goldfish. Okay, which is only 9 seconds. But according to a new study from Microsoft Corp, okay, people now generally lose concentration after 8 seconds. Okay, highlighting the effects of an increasingly digitized lifestyle, okay, on the brain. You see, researchers in Canada surveyed around 2,000 participants and studied brain activity of 112 others using, electrophilograms, okay, EEGs. And they found that since the year 2000, or about when this mobile revolution began, the average attention span dropped from 12 seconds to 8 seconds. You see what I'm saying? So does this seem like this is a positive step in evolution? And heavy multi-screeners find it increasingly difficult to filter out irrelevant stimuli, and they're more easily distracted by multiple streams of media, the report read, which is interesting. Okay, so really study that. I don't want to talk your ear off, but once again, my name is Brother Prodigy, aka William. Now, send me, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me an email. If you disagree, throw a comment down in the comment section. So once again, go out and get the book Gnosis of a God, GNOSIS of a God, GOD. Once again, the date is October 16th, 2015. I am Brother Prodigy, and if I'm addressing complex subjects. So if you do have a question, don't hesitate to drop me an email, and I'll try to get to it at my earliest convenience. Okay? Shalom and Hotep.